My name is Weston, and I am a master's student at Teachers College in Music and Music Education. I am also an instructor of voice and piano there. And this is my husband.
Hello?
Michael Fennelly. Today we're inviting you into our home, virtually, similar to the private salons of Paris in the 19th century, hosted by the most influential women of France. On a particular evening, you might hear Liszt or Chopin play one of their new pieces. You might hear Baudelaire recite some poetry, or you might have a conversation with Georges Sand. Our first piece is from Romeo et Juliet by Gounod. This is Je peux vivre. At this point in the opera, Juliet has not yet met Romeo. She sings about how she wants to live in a dream, this dream of youth, before experiencing love, and she holds this sweet flame to her soul like a treasure.
we're live. Welcome to Music Matters 2020, our brand new virtual podcast. This is a video podcast done by musicians for musicians, and we'd like to thank you for joining us today. On our podcast, we take you behind the curtains for great conversations with distinguished colleagues from the performing arts. I'm your host, Jason Tramm. I've been a music director and a conductor for 25 years, also a church musician, a professor, and an artistic consultant. And in my 25 years, I've found that my conversation with my colleagues are the times where ideas grow, people come together, great projects get born, and it's these times that are some of the most exciting. And on this show, we take you behind the curtain and you get to join the conversation. Be sure to use the chat feature to send in questions so you can join this conversation with us. And please remember to invite your friends and family as we are a growing community. And remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that bell for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. And also think about joining us on patreon.com. Our Patreon is patreon.com, MusicMM2020. Thank you so much, and we're delighted to introduce our guests today, a dynamic couple, two wonderful artists. We have Michael Fennelly, a pianist, and Weston, a soprano. And not only are they wonderful artists, they're also a lovely married couple as well. So a true team. So welcome to Megan and Michael.
Hello, Jason. Nice to be here.
Thanks so much for having us. It's really great. We're good friends.
Such a pleasure to have friends on the show, and I couldn't think of a more dynamic couple and two wonderful artists and great people and a fabulous couple as well.
Awesome, nice.
So let's start with each of your individual journeys as artists. You're both two renowned artists in your field and constantly growing and doing wonderful work. Michael, tell me about your field, your growth your journey as an artist.
Well, sure. It's first of all, I want to say thank you, Jason. It's really great. I'm a pianist and starting to do a little more conducting. But people may not know what Jason and I have done together. We've done many performances over the years. We did Beethoven Choral Fantasy with his orchestra in New Jersey. We did Megan sang Vivaldi Gloria with him in Rockland Town. Yeah. We did the thing that we're getting ready for now is actually a James Bond concert, 007, where Jason's doing the drums and his whole family's involved, his guitar sons and everything. It's going to be a blast. We'll talk about more Athena later, but this is a special concert for the opening of James Bond. But for my background, I'm from California. I think some of my friends from Livermore are on the watching tonight. And then we grew up in San Clemente, which is down in San Diego. But, you know, in California, there's not a lot of music, I have to say, because the beach is such a nice, beautiful day. And it's surfing. That's what people like to do. And somehow I got into piano, but you know, none of my friends in high school really liked it. So I was kind of known to be the pianist. And I remember a lot of my friends liked Metallica. In high school, I told my friends I toured with Metallica, and they all believed me. It was really fun. But after that, I went to Eastman up in Rochester, and then Manhattan and Juilliard, and kind of got serious. And I stayed in Manhattan, and I do a lot of tours. I've been to every continent. Siberia and Antarctica and all through Asia and Europe, everywhere there is, and that's kind of a great way to want to travel. And right now, actually, we were supposed to be in Helsinki with Everett McCorvey, your guest last week, doing the European premiere of Rhapsody in Blue, which I'll talk about a little later too. So, you know, it's been a really exciting time to be a pianist, and now I love actually staying at home. I'm wearing my suit because I've been wearing tank tops and shorts for the last month, so I thought it'd be a good chance to dress up and pretend I'm a pianist again.
So how old were you when you started playing, Michael?
I was like 3 or 4 or 5. You know, we had a piano at home, and my mom taught piano to neighborhood children, and she really enjoyed it. So it wasn't like you had a piano lesson on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock. You just kind of grew up with that. And my sisters played. I played cello. My sister played viola and violin, and I was in the school orchestra with, thank God, looking back, thank God they had that. I played cello, playing Mozart symphonies and something in 5th grade. So it was a really great way to grow up. And you just really, when you get older, you appreciate the people who really put their effort into making a school orchestra or to making a school chorus or something, because those are the people who wind up being professionals. And without that, you wouldn't have it. But I was pretty serious. When I was like 6 or 7, I really was reading about Franz Liszt, and my dad taught me every day after school, and I got up before school to practice hours and hours, and I wanted to be just like Liszt, you know, traveling around, playing everything and the hardest pieces, you know, so you really had to get that kind of inspiration. And my sisters played too. They enjoyed it, but they didn't love it the same way. So they liked more like playing in the social environments. But I just liked it, and I thought I wanted to be an engineer, and I would do music until it kind of didn't work out. So I might go back to engineering this year, you know.
Well, certainly it's taken you all over the world, and what a journey it's been. Were your parents musicians professionally?
My parents were actually really interesting, and the more I read about, I just read a Saint-Saëns biography, for example. Saint-Saëns was really interesting. Not to talk about this too much, but he was born in 1840, and his professional career lasted in 1920. So he had the whole 19th century to look back upon. And he grew up in a time when you went out to the theater, you would come home and play a string quartet of the music you heard, not just classical music, but any theater. So you come home and your parents would play the violin and cello, and you'd read through whatever was on whatever vaudeville was called back then. And then when the piano was invented in 1850, 1860, it supplanted the string quartet, and nobody plays string quartets anymore. It was kind of like the iPhone now taking over your piano. Like the piano was. To answer your question, I was playing piano a lot because I just liked it, and our parents loved doing chamber music. They were absolute amateurs, but we just liked doing it. And so the neighbor would come over doing Schubert octets and stuff. And my dad never saw piano until he was like 30 years old. He listened to pop music and threw all that away, and he was just really excited about classical music. I grew up during that time, so he played records all the time. I'm a record collector now, LPs, because of that. And it was just so much fun, and nobody cared about getting the right notes or anything. You just want to play through the music. Really great. So that's kind of why I'm too fast and too sloppy to this day, because you just really like playing, you know, the music. And thank God Megan's here to kind of make sure I'm not so bad anymore. But anyway,
Michael's got some record collection. I actually have seen it. It's just enormous record collection. It's very impressive.
Takes up a whole basement.
No, actually, this summer is the best thing for me personally in my personal life is to have time to go through my records. I don't know who likes records out there, but there's RCA, Decca, and Columbia, and EMI, and I have all the records in order of those companies from the 50s and 60s and 70s. And so I like to clean them and listen to them and listen to the different pressings and all that stuff. It's really exciting. So yeah, it's actually been great to have a little time at home.
People forget that amateur actually means for the love of, and it sounds like you were surrounded by, you know, before you became a professional, that amateur, that love of music was instilled in you from such a young age that it seems to have just carried you over. So that makes sense why every waking breath that you take now is musically related.
I really don't like the phrase professional musician because nobody does this for the money. You might make a lot or a little, but you're doing it for that moment. And this year particularly, you really have to appreciate all the concerts we did years ago, like even 6 months ago, when you're so busy running from one concert to rehearsal, recording session, you have no time to come home even. You're just out there. And we're going to look back on this time kind of like a golden age of music when, you know, everybody's complaining it doesn't pay enough, there's no time to rehearse, but we were also busy, and hopefully we'll get back to that period. And actually, it's another thing Saint-Saëns mentioned. He lived in 1880 in Paris, and you think that would be the most magical time to be a musician, but they said the same exact thing. There's no money in it, the audience has no taste, you can't get anybody interested in something serious, they just want to hear Offenbach. And it's so funny, like you always complain about the time you're in, and yet, like after World War II, and there's no money and no more grand opera anymore, that's when Britain invented pretty much the chamber opera, and he started to compose these little operas like Turn the Screw with 14 players in the pit because there's no money. So whenever you have a time like this, it's time to be creative in a new way. And everybody's doing things on the internet, and that's a great way to do music. And we just played this concert at home. So yeah, it's exciting.
So the golden age is a lot of invention of our minds, looking back to the past as being a golden age. So Megan, tell me about your journey. You're also from Southern California, right?
Right, but Michael and I met each other in New York. But I'll start where I started. I come from a family that is completely the opposite of his. They're not musical at all, and I was pretty much the only one who was really, really interested in music. And then my brother followed me in his, passion for drumming. So he's also a drummer. But I was the first, and I was about 4 years old, and I was playing, and we were free range kids. So I was over at the neighbor's house, and she was a piano teacher. And I would just hide underneath her window. And she caught me one day and walked me back home and told my mother that she thought that I was a musical child and that I should have piano lessons. What a smart lady. So at 4 years old, I started piano lessons. And my mother always supported that musical development. I'm so glad I have it now. And I'm very grateful to my mom for all those years of piano lessons. I think my true passion was always voice. But I didn't really know what opera was. When people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say, well, I want to be an actress, but I just want to sing everything. I don't want to speak. I just want to sing. So, and that was opera. And then the first time I heard a live opera was when I was a teenager, and it was Pagliacci. And I flipped. I said, this is it. This is what I want to be. And I knew that was what I wanted, but I didn't know how to do it. I was in chorus, so I knew I had the high notes and the easy, flexibility, and I had all that stuff, but I really didn't know how to pursue a career in opera. And I'm growing up in Southern California, so there were a lot of opportunities in contemporary music, in film, television, in just pop music. So I did a lot of that in high school and supported myself through college, singing pop music and singing for television and film, and also writing. So I was very, very lucky, but it was a strange route because I always knew what the goal was, but I also knew it would take some time for me to get to that point where I was going to be able to make a career, make my living. And I have to credit myself with just being a kind of, single-minded about what I wanted to do. And I thought, I'm kind of like a river. I'm just going to go this route, wherever it takes me, but that's where I want to go. So I studied jazz. I studied with songwriters. I studied with some great people, but it wasn't like I switched schools because I wasn't happy at the music school that I was at. And so I switched to Cal State Fullerton, and I got to study with Jane Paul, who was Debbie Voigt's teacher. And I knew that she was going to be the one to help me become a really good singer, and she certainly did. So from there, just many opportunities, just kind of going this course of the river, just trying to get to the goal. And I feel so fortunate to have lived my life in music. And that's what I always, I wake up and I think, gosh, it's amazing that I've been able to do it. My parents, they were very supportive up until I got to college. And then it wasn't that they lost faith in me, but they just thought, oh no, you have to have a backup plan. And I think it's important to have other skills, but I also think, if you want to do music, then do it. And you have to do it when you're
both feet, because
right.
My mentor told me when I was finishing my doctorate, I was deciding, do I want to be a university professor, or do I want to stay here and go into opera? And he was saying, if you could see yourself doing anything else, do that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he was discouraging me. He was actually saying, either you're all in this or you're not.
Right. So you have to ask all the young people out there. You have to ask yourself that question. And if you're willing to take a big leap of faith, then and you really believe in yourself and you can keep the course, then you can make it happen. I believe.
I remember my uncle said that to me too. I knew I wanted to be a pianist, but when you're 20s, you kind of date girls and everything. Then I met Megan, and I talked to my uncle, who was my good friend, and I said, Uncle Mark, should I get married? And he goes, no, definitely don't get married. Do not do it. And I said, well, Megan's so nice. He goes, don't. And then I got married. I said, why do you say not get married? He goes, if you're going to listen to your uncle about whether to marry a girl, you shouldn't do it. If you're saying no, then you're right. So why are you asking me? Just that. So he was right, because I was not sure, you know. He was sure. But anyway, thank you, Uncle Mark, for saying no to marry Megan. Turned out really
didn't follow that. I'm so glad you didn't follow that advice too.
Well, it's only been 13 years so far.
So how did getting married affect the stream of your lives and your careers?
I think at the time we'd already both of us had pretty established careers. We got married in our 30s, so we weren't like youngsters, but we weren't. We were kind of like right in the flow, right in the busy time of your life and your career. So
well, I have maybe a more personal answer. No, to be a solo pianist, when I finished, I did school straight, from kindergarten to doctorate. You know, you're practicing in a room. You know, I had fun and everything, but you're pretty much focused on piano. Then you graduate and the school's gone. You know, you have to pay your school loans, and you're just staring at the phone like, please ring, you know. And so I got a phone call to go on a tour of South America. Like the next day, somebody dropped out, and you have to have 4 programs all ready to go, you know, just kind of say. So I said, sure, you know. And so I did that tour, and then it led to maybe 10 years of tours. But, you know, as a pianist, you're by yourself. You do a concert, and if there's nobody in the audience, you're kind of, you know, depleted. You have no spirit left. And then you have to do it again and again and again. And after many, many years of that, being totally alone, it's the only art form you're by yourself. I mean, anything else, you have somebody you're traveling with or a conductor or something, but you're really by yourself. Anyway, so I came back to New York, and, you know, I always worked here. And I met Megan, and she was doing some auditions, and I was her pianist for the auditions. It's a very common thing to do in New York City. And I just thought she was really beautiful and so nice. And so, but she always was kind of, you know, too pretty for me and everything. And so, no, it's really true. But I was just really drawn to her. And then I realized later, when I became started to do a lot more conducting, Jason, I'm going to ask you this. You may not know this, or maybe Megan doesn't. The word soprano, Megan's a soprano, which means the highest voice. And of course, in music, it means the highest voice. But do you know what the word means in Italian without music? Sopra means above. No means the one. It means the one above. And sopranos are the best things in the world, by definition. And if they don't feel that every morning they wake up that they're the best things, they can't be on stage. Because a soprano is opposite than a pianist. I'm alone on stage, but a soprano, you have the whole chorus behind you, the tenor, the mezzo, you know, all the other players, the conductor, all of the orchestra players, all the people in the audience, the valet parking, the cafe restaurant, the opera shop, all those people just listening to you breathe. And that's it. She has no piano, no props, no nothing. Is, you know, for a person to have that talent where they feel that their breathing is worth the attention of thousands of people, it's phenomenal to be around somebody with that talent. And so you pianists and sopranos are really, I think, drawn to each other, because our instrument is dead as a piece of wood, and you're trying to make it come alive every single day. And then when you meet a person who embodies the melody that you're trying to make in the piano, well, it's a great match, you know. But you have to kind of just start playing together and do concerts, and it's really a great way to have the life together. So
a great match musically and a great match personality-wise, obviously. It's such a beautiful thing. Tell me about, so you've each maintained your solo careers, and you've been both very busy as solo artists running around, and I know from both of you, two of the busiest people I know. So I know you've decided to do a lot of work together. How have you formed your careers together? How have you melded your talents?
Well, I think this leads into the question about Athena. You know, as a pianist, you have lots of different concerts. You do solo concerts, chamber concerts with every instrument, you know, violin, tuba, oboe, and all the voice types. So you really have a lot of, well, it's like being a conductor, you know, all the different parts. So I started to do concerts in New York City, and they would say, hey, can you get a couple people to do this concert here at a private home or in a church, or if Jason needs a soloist, you know. So you start kind of draw, you call your friends to perform with. I'm sure you do the same thing. So I met Megan, and
well, no, we were already together.
No, I'm saying we had met, and so I started to ask her to do concerts, or she asked me. And then they say, bring another tenor. And then pretty soon, well, our friend Alice Candell, you know, she started to do these house parties where you have 2 or 3 singers. This piece, we could do, if we got 8 people, we could do this piece.
We could do more,
you know, if you just get a chorus, you know, you can get an orchestra. Why don't you get that? And then I think we're going to play Kip later. These little house parties turned out to be a whole new career because of Megan, and our friends just joined us, and it was so much fun. So Megan can talk about Athena, which maybe is...
Well, Athena Music Foundation, and you can find it at athenamusicfoundation.org. Like Michael said, it happened very organically. It was, I guess we formalized it more in about 2014. But it had been going on for years, like these small parties on the Upper East Side, and whenever anybody would call us. And so we have this group of singers that we usually call, but it's a rotating group because everybody's busy all the time and you don't know who's going to be in town. So that's how it started. But then I'd say around 2014, we were asked to do La Traviata, a small production at the Berkshire Theater Group. And so we put this together, Michael and me and some other people, and we, presented a small production of La Traviata, and it had a small chorus. We had a director, and we had rehearsals and
costumes,
costumes.
Well, it's another case. It started off very small, but
and then it grew.
And our friends, we say it's small, but these are all major singers.
Yeah, it was
singers,
Manon,
city opera people.
Manon Strauss-Savard did Violetta, and Cody Austin sang Alfredo.
Yes.
So we had some great people in the cast, just amazing. And so I look back at that production, and I think that really was the beginning of Athena Music Foundation. We didn't have the name yet. And then the next year we went to China. Again, these things just kind of flop in our lap.
Domingo.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. You've got I know both of you are both great people, and you have a lot of friends, and your friends are all in the industry. It's amazing how important having friends and contacts is in the music industry. What can you tell me about that?
Well, I think before, like you said, if you really love music, everybody who loves music gets around you, So like concerts, if you call someone and say, hey, you want to do a concert? And the first thing they say is, how much does it pay? It's probably not the best person to call. But if they say, hey, what music is it? And I have my friend.
Sorry about that. We're at the whims of the internet with this show. That's part of the joys of these podcasts, is they're live and they're unscripted, and we're in the middle of a great thought there, talking about the importance of friends and colleagues in the field. And I know for myself, having been involved with so many productions, it's always the friendships that make these productions even more exciting and important. And we were just talking about that. So follow up on those thoughts, Michael.
I want to finish what we were kind of saying about Athena. So it came out, all our friends, like Schubert, you had this circle of his friends that you always got together. And then Megan had a very good idea a long time ago. She goes, why not at these parties don't you play Rhapsody in Blue? Because that's a fun piece. In school you just play.
And also for concerts.
Yeah, it's a great piece. Yeah.
I kept harping on him. That is the perfect concerto for an American pianist to learn. Yeah. You've got to learn that piece. And so I kept telling him to.
So in school, you learn your whole Beethoven sonata and you learn your concerto, and that's wonderful. It's really good. But when you get out of school, and what we learned in Athena is that the audience back Rhapsody in Blue, which I've never heard of before. And so we researched it, and it turns out Gershwin wrote Rhapsody in Blue when he was 24 years old, and it made him world famous overnight. When he was 37 years old, he started to do another version of this chorus, because I think there's a radio show and they had a chorus in the back, and so he kind of wrote parts. Well,
I think it was a commercial.
Yeah, it was a commercial. It was a radio broadcast, and they had this choral. Anyway, so these sketches of this choral version was recorded in 1944 by Earl Wild, but really it's disappeared in history. So I called up and found it, and I got the parts together, and I called the rights for Warner Brothers and all this stuff. And so we kind of reworked this choral version of Rhapsody in Blue, which had never been heard since 1937.
Well, it's more than reworked.
Well, you have to make it bigger.
I mean, it was a tiny little sketch that Gershwin had done, and Michael wrote all the words and, wrote this very big chorus
elaborate.
So who wrote the original libretto for that? Who wrote the text for that choral version?
So the original words were just oohs and ahs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Gershwin didn't do
So then I rode my bike around Manhattan. I ride my bike while I work, and you're thinking of the words, and I can't sing, but it goes, when I'm alone, I dream of you, and you have to try to make it sound like Ira Gershwin.
Yeah, like
someday you'll be my missus, sharing my hugs and kisses. It's not easy to think of those
It's very,
kind of words.
Very old-fashioned.
It's old-fashioned. You want to have it like 1920s.
To find something that important, a piece that's that historically important. I mean, the Rhapsody in Blue is one of the pillars of American music.
Oh, it's top pieces.
That must have been so exciting to find that, to discover that, and to bring that to life.
It was one of these. I don't know if was it a CD or was it a record?
It was a CD.
Okay, it was a CD. We were listening to it at dinner time.
But I'm trying to say it's legitimate. It's not like I just thought of doing this. Gershwin really started it. He really wanted to finish it. Everybody was getting on the project, and then he died. And so I feel like it's not just like something you're doing out of the blue. It's really finishing the piece.
Right.
And we did with Everett Corby in Lincoln Center and Avery Fisher Hall with this group. And it's the type of thing before you finish the piece, the audience is already standing up. It's so exciting.
It's very exciting. It's extra exciting.
Yeah, because you get the
whole
chorus and everything.
I mean, it's even more.
Yeah. So that's kind of been a boost to my career, I guess. And like I said earlier, we are supposed to be right now in Helsinki doing the premiere of it, and doing a whole tour of Europe, and then hopefully going to Japan. Everybody I meet wants to do it. It's really nice. So, and I'm going to keep bugging you.
We'll find that time.
Yeah.
Because I love that piece to begin with, and just to add a chorus to it is even more exciting. It just adds grandeur and excitement, and
it would be incredible with all the voices that you have.
Well, as a conductor, you've probably conducted almost every choral piece out there. What pieces haven't you done yet?
Mahler 8's on my list, but I need a budget. I have to raise some money for that one.
But at least the first movement. I always tell everybody, just do the first movement. The rest of it.
I love conducting Rhapsody. I love Gershwin. I did one of my most important performances with Porgy and Bess in Newark, and I just immersed myself in Gershwin when I was conducting that, and just his synthesis of classical, Western classical with jazz it's so uniquely American. So that's why I just love that repertoire.
Oh, it's amazing. And unfortunately, as you get older, all you start thinking about was why did Mozart, Schubert, Gershwin, they all died, Bizet, they all died so young, and they were just getting good. And you probably know the story already.
They were great. They would have gotten amazing.
No, you have no idea what he would have done for 50 more years, or Mozart. But I'm sure you know the story. Gershwin went to study with Ravel in Paris, and they said, "Don't change anything. You're just doing great." He didn't have to really even study. They say the Rhapsody in Blue just came to him in a kind of a vision that he just had to write down the music. So, if you have genius like that and he dies so young, you just can't
so
help
sad
to think what
to contemplate. But I've also heard that sometimes the star that shines twice as bright burns out twice as fast, because someone like Mozart or Gershwin who's just so it's sad to think that they could have had another 30 years. Like if he lived to 50s or 60s, what would have happened? And with opera writing, if Porgy and Bess was his first foray into opera, can you imagine what he could have done with a couple more librettos and some more time?
Well, that's the thing. Like, if Verdi had died that age, he would have been written Lombardi. Now, a really early opera that's not one of his famous ones.
Which was a flop.
Yeah, that would have been his. I made a chart once of if everybody died when they were 36 or 37, Beethoven pretty much had nothing. Liszt had a lot of stuff, but it was not his mature pieces. And so if you think Mozart would have written whatever Wagner wrote when he was 80, it just would have changed music. But on the other hand, thank God we had 37 years of Mozart, because all his brothers and sisters died. No, his sister lived, but there was many brothers that had not lived. And then his sister lived to be like 80 years old, and his mom too. So it wasn't like back then people died young. It's just
they did, but
not everybody.
It wasn't like that.
Anyway, it's a mystery of being alive.
But I do think if you're pushing yourself, I think of Schubert, and I'm sure he had a sense that he didn't have a lot of time, but he was working constantly. He had so much music that he needed to write down. He knew it, and he knew that he had a limited amount of time. He
composed himself to death. Yeah, the last 3 months is a story. He was getting sicker and sicker, and he was in Vienna, and he had to move apartments. You ever moved an apartment? It's hard. You have to put all this stuff, and it's dusty. And then he got home after moving, and he composed his late 3 sonatas after that, like after he got home. Like, how can you even get out a pen and write? These guys are just such geniuses. And so when you play this music, it's such an honor, and you really want to get to the story that grabbed the composer and you play, and not just get the right notes. This drives me crazy when you see pianists playing or a conductor, and you can tell they don't really have the story of the piece. They're just getting it correct. And I know there's historical reasons for that. Like the CD has to be very, very clean and everything. But when I grew up, I loved hearing just the music, and it's hard to define what music is. But for me, it's like when you can tell there's a story behind it, like an opera, that is really drawing you. And so when I practice, I'm always trying to get that out.
I mean, well, Jason, like when you were growing up, did you, I know when my dad would play, symphonies or whatever, he liked classical music. And so he had a few classical recordings. And I know I would always come up with stories in my head for what was happening. Was that the same
There's
for
always
you?
a poetry. Yeah, I love stories. I love cinema. I see everything cinematically. So when I'm conducting a piece, I always want to know what was happening in the composer's life, maybe what was going on romantically, if there was a piece that might have a tie into that. I'm always looking for those connections, because the humanity of the people that wrote it is so important. And it's like all music's like amber, and it traps in whatever was happening in the historical time period, societally. There's just so much that we can capture in music. It's a snapshot in time. So I always have to know what was going on around the composer, what was happening in society, who were their friends. I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, I feel the same. I love that.
There's certain stories that are really famous that everybody repeats about composers, like they wouldn't be in depth. It's a very important story. But there's so many other stories that if you read the letters or find that, like Megan and I found out that Franz Liszt had an affair with Marie Duplass, who is the Violetta in Traviata, and they were real people.
Well, she's the inspiration.
So the real people, really live. And there's a letter that she wrote to him saying, "I want to be with you all night long and travel with you," and it's the real source, and you don't have to get it from a biography. It's really in the letter. So if you can get these little moments, or like there's another one, Debussy, who was going through the park. It's not a famous letter at all, but he saw a lady wearing a green hat, and pinned her green hat was a piece of green felt. And that tiny different shade, the green against the green, he was following over her for like hours and couldn't get out of his head. And you think, that's Debussy, 2 tiny different shades of sound. And that type of thing, you think that's what that person's really like. And it's not a famous story. It's just something that he wrote one time, So if you can get these little glimpses of the characters of the composers and the music, it's pretty exciting.
The poetry of the music is the storytelling, and is that depth. And I really appreciate that in both of your performing, is that detail and that actual humanity in both of your performing is such a special part of what makes you both great musicians.
Well, and that's why music will never die. No matter what the situation, like right today, people are writing music and getting concerts organized on the internet and composing symphonies. It just all the time. It's just burning. And I haven't composed much. I mean, I would like to do more, because I always find when I'm not in New York City, I can compose no problem. But in New York City, you're so worried about getting there at 3 o'clock and not missing the note. But I remember on that trip to Antarctica, I was practicing all day. And then I stopped practicing. This whole Chopin Polonaise came to me, and I just played it all the way through. It probably wasn't a great piece or anything, but it was a real piece. And I didn't even write it down, because I was like, oh, I'll remember this. And of course, the next day it's gone. And if you could develop that training where you can just have the music flow through you.
So that leads us into this time where we've actually had a lot more time, not me in particular, but Michael has had a lot more time during this crisis, this COVID. And I think it's been beneficial. I've heard both sides where people are very worried about money and they've had so many cancellations. And then on the other hand, you've had more time to really spend with your families, to think about other things that you want to do besides just running around.
Then you think
whatever, teaching or playing, what Michael does, which is crazy work in New York City.
Yeah, it does kind of think, what do you want to, like Bernstein said at the end of his life, he had 10 years, well, he didn't know it, but he was getting to be pretty old, and he thought, I have 10 or 20 years more left in my life. What do you want to do with the time that you have? And he said, I can conduct, I can compose, or I can teach. And he really chose teaching. He said, that's the most reward for my time. And so for me, it's like, yeah, I want to go back and play all the pieces I used to learn, new pieces, old pieces, and get things together, and then do other things that you never had time to do. So I like conducting, going through the conducting book and really learning it. So it's a great time to do this. And also, about the money, you realize how much money you spend that you don't need to spend because when you're busy, you spend it all.
You certainly do. I've noticed that too. I'm so used to commuting all the time, being in the city and having meetings about meetings and traveling. And now that I haven't been, it's kind of wild. It changes everything. And I was supposed to be in Europe for 2 performances in June and traveling in a tour in Scotland. And after it kind of evaporated, there's just so much more time in the day now.
Yeah.
I remember about a year ago, I thought if I could have one 24-hour period at home where I can just sleep and stay at home one day. I mean, it was rare. I mean, there's hardly any day you could have at home. And now you forget what day it is, But it really opens your creativity to different types of things. So it's a real blessing. And I had to say, blessing,
but also, for the performers, for the performing side, it's also just kind of devastating. So many people have lost.
Well, I hope that we get the audiences back after this.
Yeah, that's the worry, to get the audiences back.
Because if people think, I can just watch a computer at home and see a performance, performers know, and I'm sure audiences too, you need that person-to-person thing, especially with classical music. No microphone, no technology. I'm sure everybody knows this, but I'm going to tell you, when you hear an opera at the Met in the hall, it shakes your body in a way no microphone can do that. None. I have a great stereo. It's nothing. I would throw it away in a second, because live music, it reverberates on your whole entire body, and whatever that person's thinking, it just transmits to you. And of course, everybody out there knows that, but it's right now especially true because we don't have it. So when you have something for granted, all the performances you did in your whole life, even little ones that you think, this isn't important, well, that's your life. Now you think every minute you play, it might be your last performance. So you just really gotta. And
making music with other people, we're so fortunate, Jason. I mean, I feel very fortunate that we can still perform together. Sometimes I'll play piano and Michael will play cello.
For fun, we have time.
But we're lucky that we can still make music together.
Are you playing with your family a lot, Jason?
Yeah, I bet you are.
We have been, but lately we've been all my family's involved with this podcast, and so Quentin does all the tech, and Rosie did the graphics and all the look stuff, and we've been all working on this podcast together. My daughter's she's working the social media part of it, and so it's been something new, and I never knew I wanted to do this, but I'm having a blast having conversations with great artists and just talking about life. And it's been kind of a therapy for the artists as well as me, because I'm just like you. I'm used to being in 8 rehearsals a week and with thousands of musicians that I'm normally that I make music with. And with this all gone, I've had to shift everything immediately. So everything is virtual choir rehearsals, Zoom rehearsals, Skype rehearsals, and it's not the same, certainly, but I find it's incredibly valuable to keep communities together. to keep artistic communities intact and the people, you know, to give them the music that they need. Now, there are severe limitations, Skype and Zoom, as we know, and we've even had some technical issues with this call. But there's these problems that we have to overcome. But in the interim, I think it's important that we use the technology to keep our platforms going, to keep ourselves growing, so that we're ready to jump back in and with both feet to make music.
And, you know, human nature never changes. One of my favorite quotes, remember Grout, the history book that we read in school? It's really boring, you know, you're reading about medieval times. Well, I remember the very first paragraph, and it says they were doing a competition, and the young people came to play, and the judges didn't like any of them, the older people. They said they play too fast, they don't understand the music, they're just kind of go for the physicality of the piece, and they're just showing off to the audience, they have no idea what they're doing, and they had to award somebody, so they gave it to the fastest player. And then it says, the end of the quote, when was that? Can you guess? Do you know this? It was 2500 BC, a lute composition in ancient Greece. People never change. You know, young people play too fast. They don't know what's anything. And the old people go, oh, you don't understand Wagner. Well, yeah, it takes a long time. So my point being, life and music, every day you play the same piece or a different thing. I was playing a Mozart sonata today, just the B flat. You see so much in that you didn't see yesterday. It's incredible.
It's amazing how time does deepen all of our experiences. I know whenever I approach a piece I've conducted before, it's like I always have to see it like all fresh again, because it's like looking at a great painting. Every angle gives you a different kind of interpretation and a different possibilities.
Right. I just read that book. You remember Balzac? Nobody knows who he is, but he's that quote in Music Man. She goes, "What are you reading?" And she goes, "Balzac." And I think, I'm going to read some Balzac. I never read it. It was a great book, and it turns out that was the basis of Godfather. Like this book paired. Yeah, I told you. It's where the people who wrote the screenplay Godfather, we have such ambition where no human cost will get in your way, and you just kind of bulldoze your way to society.
Are you just making up?
No. You can look up on it's on Wikipedia. I looked it up.
Wow.
It's Father Gordeau, Père Gordeau. And it's a book by Balzac, 1830, after the Napoleon Wars, and society was kind of thrown apart, and this young kid's going up through society. And the quote, you know, this quote where is, I made him an offer I could never refuse. What is it in The Godfather? He says, I made him an offer
you couldn't refuse.
That's by Balzac. And so you read this book and you think, oh my God, the reasons it's so famous. And so during this time, I'm trying to read great literature and not looking at TikTok or anything stupid that melts your brain, you know.
I love the fact that we all live in this modern time, and we're engaged, but we also find the time to read great art and literature. I find that always makes my music more whole. I just finished a couple great books and just took some time to do that.
What books?
I just read Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth.
Oh, I read that book.
Wow,
yeah.
Just the idea that the cathedral took generations to build, 500 years.
Right.
One person didn't see the end of their work. That was the way it was back then, and it fascinates me.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he has a lot of great historical detail about the cathedral building. I enjoyed that. Oh. I think there's a second book to that, too. I think I read it. I forget what it's called, though.
Well, right now, you know, to this day, you know, the Notre Dame's burned down. They're going to rebuild it. Now they decide whether to build.
Burned down. No, I think they already rebuilt.
No, this fire. They're going to decide whether to build it as medieval or 1850 or a new one now. And you can tell. And actually, that was one of the pieces that we did for Athena. When Notre Dame was burned, there's an opera by Schmidt called Notre Dame that nobody ever does. So I got the intermezzo of it. It's the same intermezzo as the Mascagni. What is it? The Cavalier. It's the same type of intermezzo. So we performed it in one of our concerts right after that. And it's a case where current events can really inform your choices artistically.
And that's you know, Athena Music Foundation has evolved. It's not just these salon type parties anymore.
Yeah. We try to do serious music.
Like I said, we went to China on a tour, and then we came back having learned a lot about making sure that the contracts are correct. But you know, it's always like this learning process.
We have our first question from the audience. And Steve from Kansas writes, "Why the name Athena? What's the significance of Athena and the Athena Foundation?"
I can answer that. Well, of course, everybody knows Athena is the goddess of wisdom and knowledge, and she loves art. It's not exactly Diana, but she's the one who loves it. And so I've known that, of course. But my personal story, when I was in 8th grade or something, there was a girl named Athena in our class, and she was the daughter of the principal, and he was a very, knowledgeable cultural guy, and she was a little more mature than other girls because she read books and everything. I was just thought, gosh, what a great name for somebody who loves art. And so when I get older, I'm going to have kids and name them Athena. And so we had this foundation. I thought, well, let's name it Athena. But Athena. And that's my personal story. I never asked Megan why she liked Athena.
I've always loved the myths growing up, and I read them all. And Athena and Artemis were of course, my favorites. They were always, Artemis is the goddess of the hunt, and Athena is the goddess of wisdom. So wisdom and art.
And thank you for, what was the name from Canada?
Steve from Kansas.
Oh,
Kansas. Well, thank you, Steve. It's really nice to get off of that. Yeah, I hope we can come. I've been to Hutchinson, Kansas. I played in that place. It was beautiful. They have a space museum there. It's amazing. So every time you tour, you get to find something different about the world. And I have to say, traveling around the world, everywhere you go, you find somebody who loves music or culture, anywhere. And so you can be in Tibet.
That's part of the goal of Athena, is to make sure that we're bringing music, classical music, primarily opera and classical music, to audiences that are very diverse, that maybe haven't been really exposed to a lot of classical music. And I think that's our main thrust.
Well, yeah, we didn't say it before, but what we should have mentioned is this summer, Athena has gotten a grant, an idea to do concerts in each borough of Manhattan. Yeah. So we're going to go to Staten Island, to Manhattan, the Bronx.
With the historic houses.
Yeah, and these historic houses. And you get free park concerts.
That got
take
canceled
it to the people. Yeah, because it got canceled.
In June.
But we'll do it in September.
This month we were supposed to do it, but we're hoping to do it in September. It's, still very tentative at this point.
Whenever they open, they'll do it. We'll be there. But the point being, you want to go to the audience. Your job as a musician is not to play for Jason Tramm, but to play for people who don't know this music or never heard it. Like when I was a kid, I went to these free park concerts, and it probably wasn't that good, but I remember hearing the overture to the Carmen first time, and it was just the most exciting thing. I thought, those people are so lucky to be playing that music. I was just 7 years old, and I remember that moment my entire life. And so if we can do concerts out, maybe somebody walk by and see it and hear it, but the point being to people who don't normally hear it. And that's the whole point. And it's exciting that way. And you still want to have the best level because, like Mozart said, you want to appeal to the most sophisticated person and also to the basest bar music you ever heard at the same time. So, and I think you can. And as you know, 19th century music wasn't a museum piece. It wasn't culture. And this whole idea about culture being uplifting, I don't really agree.
It is uplifting, but it has the ability
to be immediately appealing. You should want to buy tickets to it.
With anybody, even people who have never heard it before. And to talk about children, I teach, and right now I'm at Teachers College in Columbia. I'm teaching there. But I think almost all the students that I teach at Columbia, they're avocational. They're not pursuing music degrees, but they just have an interest and a love of music. And also many children that I teach, they're not exposed to classical music, but I think it's definitely my job to get them interested in it, and usually they do. They get very, very interested.
Well, and like you said, Jason, that's the definition of amateur. You do it because you love it, and that's, to me, the best way.
And they don't have to become musicians. No, professional musicians, but as long as you're inspiring a lifelong love of music, that's
I can't imagine two people better for that than you two, because you both live your art. You're both passionately advocates of this art form, and out there bringing new people in and bringing the music to the people. It's a beautiful thing. What are some of the countries you've been to with Athena that you've done concerts at?
Oh my God! On my biography says I've been everywhere from
Well,
Andorra to Zimbabwe, A to Z.
I mean, in our careers, we've traveled a lot, but specifically with Athena, we were in Dubai last year. We got to do a short tour of Dubai. We've been to China. Where else, Ina? Where else have we been?
Macau. Hong Kong. And then all the United States. And then, like I say, we're supposed to be in the United States. We're supposed to be in Finland right now, you know. And this was before Athena, but I played in tuba, which you may know because of throat singing. You remember about? Yeah. So I met a girl in Andorra, another pianist, and she invited me to play in Krasnoyarsk, Siberia, where Dmitry Horostovsky is from. So I played in Krasnoyarsk, and then I had an invitation to go to the capital of Mongolia, Kuala Lumpur. I can't remember, to play there. Well, you can't get from Krasnoyarsk to Kuala Lumpur. You have to go all the way to Moscow. So we went to Tuva instead, and it was amazing. And she's a pianist too, so we were just walking around. Thank you. That's exactly right. I still have not yet been there because that Tuva is famous for throat singing, but also it's the most farthest place on Earth, farthest from the ocean. So it's a geologically most distant point in the entire planet, and they have a little pile of rocks there that you can put your pile of rock on and say a prayer. And so my rock's there. And so what I want to do is just travel and play piano the rest of my life. Right. And that's kind of what you do. But it's true, after you get to go someplace like that, there's not really anywhere else to go. Well,
last year we went to Bhutan.
Yeah, Bhutan.
Which is
we played really the first concert in 25 years in Bhutan. This is in the Himalayas next to Tibet. After Dubai, we went to India and Bhutan, and we asked that our friend Alice Candell knows the royal family, so we're at the Queen's house. He said, "Where can be a concert?" He said, "You know what? This nonprofit
one piano in Bhutan,
one Yamaha grand piano at this convention center." So we found it had boxes all over the place, and we were looking for it. And these people are very well educated, but they don't know music.
Well, they don't know Western music.
Well, our music. So we got it out, and Megan sang Mozart, and I played Chopin on his piano.
We did a very small
half-hour program.
Dig this piano. It was a fine piano.
It was fine. It was an auditorium.
But it was in a corner, and it had a bunch of boxes piled on top.
They didn't know where the piano was. That was the funniest part. Like they said. Anyway, so we did the only concert in Bhutan for 25 years.
Shocked. Yeah. They were shocked. They'd never heard anything like Michael playing the Polonaise, and certainly had never been exposed to any kind of
and we got to hear their music. They have 3-day festivals where they have the
the throat singing, of course, the monks.
Yeah, the monks, and they're dancing, and it's absolutely medieval. It's amazing. Bhutan, if you don't know, is one of the last countries that has no Western influence, no advertising, no commercial change there at all. They have their own way, and
they severely limit. They limit the amount of tourism in. You have to be with a guide the whole time. It's wonderful. The people are warm and
very free country. It's not that you can't go around, but they want to keep it.
They just want to limit it.
Yeah, so everybody studies art there. They have schools and schools of people learning how to continue their tradition of art. And so I kind of think that's the way we are. And actually, I met a girl from Belgium there in Tibet, in Bhutan. And I had just played some Chopin, and she said, "Oh, I'm studying art, Tibetan art, in Bhutan." And she's from Belgium. I said, "Oh, what do you think about César Franck?" I wasn't trying to quiz her, but that's the only famous, classical composer is Franck. And she had never heard of him. I said, "Well, if you're 20 years old and you're studying art in Bhutan, you might want to know about your own music." And she goes, "Oh, I'll listen to it." I'm sure she's.
I love the cultural diffusion. Whenever we get together in different countries with artists and musicians, even when you don't even speak the language well, it's amazing how the music overcomes those borders.
Yeah, it's really true. And like I say, the human voice, every opera singer knows this. When you sing with your real voice, and they never heard a voice do that.
Yeah, the trained voice just in a hall, it just grabs you. It's nothing like it. It's a visceral response. And it's nothing. The internet is great, and these Zoom concerts and calls are wonderful, but there's nothing like that intimacy and the power of the human voice and live music to grab your heart and soul.
And we really have Megan's taught me a lot since she's been in Manhattan School, Columbia. That the young children, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, have to hear there, so they won't understand tonality, basically. And so if you don't get this language in you, it's almost in part. Maybe she can say it better, but.
Well, I mean, there have been a lot of studies, and they say that you really have to have exposure before you're 8 or 9 years old to be able to audiate, which is hear music in your head. So and the benefits in lifelong your cognitive abilities is greatly increased with early music education. A lot of the research indicates that.
And I love that word. You have imagination, where you see things in dreams, but you have auralization, or what do you call it? Audiation, where you only hear. There's no visual at all. And you can tell the big composers like this, like Scriabin especially. I know he had his vision side, but that sound, every composer has their own aural imagination. It's audiation. And it's a special skill that is... and it has nothing to do if you have perfect pitch or not that type of stuff. Just this
hearing music in your head.
Yeah, and it's great. So
and I think all children hear the music. They all are open to it. They're all wanting.
Have you studied Edwin Gordon in your travels? Edwin Gordon.
Well, that's Gordon.
I took a class from him when I was doing my master's degree. I took a course with him. And the theory of audiation with him describing it was really something that opened my eyes, and getting students to listen and to think it's amazing stuff.
And that, I can tell you as a pianist, because opera is very visual, and that's great. But as a pianist, ideally, you want to kind of have your eyes closed and just see the story of whatever Beethoven's writing about. And it's different to everybody. And I don't know, in classical music, it's such a bad thing to say this piece is programmatic, but I don't see how it can be any other way. It doesn't mean that that's what Beethoven thought, but if you have your own idea, why not share it with the audience and see what they think? If they don't like it, they have their own idea. But the idea that you have sound without video, without image is... well, it's kind of funny, like having records, it's a historical aberration from like 1900 to say 1990 that you'd have music with no visual. That's unusual. From the beginning of time, you would never have music without visual. It's only the 20th century that has recordings with no vision. So you kind of think that changed music a lot to have this idea, and especially in the 1960s when you have like Alfred Brendel, who's like disgusting to look at, and he's on the record cover. They would never do that now.
That's not very nice.
No, it's true. He has covers where his band-aids are on his fingers. It's horrible. But in the 60s, it was a very, kind of cerebral thing to have art, and you don't want to have any visual component of it because you want to have. So they had a lot of artists like me with bad hair and just like on the cover of magazines. And now it's totally different. To benefit, you have people, these young superstars wearing short dresses. That's fantastic if they play well. But my point being, it's very unusual to have a whole century with sound with no visual.
Yeah.
It will never happen again.
Well, it's very visual now.
That's why I want to get every single record ever made in my collection here, which,
You have to deal with that, Megan. You got to have an extra basement.
Okay, this is a note to everybody watching. Do not tell Michael you have a collection of records you want to give him. Please don't. We have enough. We can't have any more.
You can tell me anytime. I come to Kansas and get your records.
No.
I know that people are always giving record collections, and they're always coming forward. So.
Grand piano and record collections, people can't give them away. So send them to Stony Point, New York.
Please.
I love it.
Don't.
But it's true. For young people who haven't heard it, LPs sound so much better than CDs or anything on the computer because it's because the whole point about LPs, I know we're running out of time, is that there's no digital. So when you sing, it makes the air move and it makes the needle move, and that's what you put on there's no barrier between you and the actual sound that moves. Digital is totally different. It goes through computers and transistors, and transistors were invented in 1968 around there, and it changed music. You can do live editing. But if you listen to 78 record, that is a live recording, exactly what Caruso did right then, no editing. And now, that's why video is so important now. It's you can see what they're doing live, and there's hardly any editing. So it's kind of neat how technology makes music.
So what we're getting towards the end of our
again.
interview. Tell me about where you think music's going to go. We're in this era of COVID. We're doing, like, you're both doing so many online concerts, home concerts. Where do you think music's going to go in this interim period as we regain our footing, as we start to put things back together again?
I have my answer to that. Again, it goes down to Wagner. Wagner's whole innovation from music at the time was you take operas, which had an aria, an ensemble recitative, and it was pretty fake. It wasn't the way people talk in real life. So he said, I'm going to make art that has the theater, spoken theater, the music, everything all together in one thing. And I think he was the last composer to do that, to really have. Beethoven did that in Wagner. But then after that, it's also specialized. You have classical music and rap music and popular music, and it's all different. And I think we're waiting for some genius out there, maybe he's listening, to wrap it all up together. We can, like Bernstein did in the Mass, the Mass, the 1970 Mass, where he has every form of art in one unifying expression for one thing. And I think this is a great time to do that, because you have the internet and you have all different technology of sounds and the string quartet. And somebody could put them all together, because I don't like this specialization where you can't. Well, I was listening to Laurel and Hardy. Remember him from the 1920s? They had rap music then. They put a beat on, and it's the very first Laurel Hardy short, and it sounds like music right now. The wife's mad at him. She's yelling and yelling and yelling. He starts doing the rap so he doesn't have to hear it. I just can't believe that this has been pretty much, and of course rap has.
That probably came from vaudeville. They probably were.
Of course, rap has many. I don't know anything about rap, but it's long traditions. So I'm saying people don't change, and whatever's new now, you can tie it into the whole history. So anyway, I think music has a great future as always, and we're just always getting new sounds and all this. Like Everett said in the broadcast last week, all this music written now about the second civil rights movement today. That's happening right now. All these new pieces. Kevin Thompson just has a new aria out right now. So music always reflects the time, constantly. So that's our job to do that now.
So yeah, I think as far as Athena goes, I think we were. It was easy for us to. I think it's going to be a little bit easier for smaller organizations to adapt. I think these larger entities like the Met or the big companies, they're having a very difficult time. But the more nimble, smaller organizations who have always, like our beginnings were in small venues, we're going to be at the forefront of getting back to live performances.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Fingers crossed very soon.
Well, you know Jason very well. In New York City, if somebody calls you to do a concert tomorrow, you call up the people and get it ready tomorrow.
Everyone's ready to jump in.
Yeah, big organization. Yeah. So we're, as soon as they say we can go out perform safely and make sure everybody's healthy, and that's of course the most, because art is luxury, and you have to make sure society's fine before you put art out there. That's just the way it is, and that's fine. So when everybody's ready for it, we'll be right there.
And hopefully with artists like yourselves, be ready to jump in there and fill that void and make people happy and to heal the hearts of people, because this has been such a hard time in terms of the unrest, in terms of the worry about the disease. There's so much that we need music more than ever.
Right.
Well, I think it will be a big.
And I also think 10 years ago this would have been very difficult to have all these, video podcasts and all these live performances that are being streamed, because the streaming technology just wasn't up to, the level it is at this point. So it's kind of, if you want to look at the positive side, it's happening now like it didn't happen even 5 years ago. Really. You have to look at the positives, and that is a positive. technology has allowed us
I had
to
a
continue
guest
to
on a couple
perform.
weeks ago. Was a Holocaust survivor, Luna Kaufman, and we were talking about how during this this period she survived the whole war at a concentration camp, and she came. But she was saying how this period has been so wonderful because she's in touch with people in 7 different countries almost on a daily basis, and there's just so much entertainment online. There's so much ability to connect with people, and she's still giving lectures and talking about the Holocaust to children, that we can still connect with people in ways that would have been unimaginable 5 years ago, like you just said.
Right.
Well, and also, think of all the great composers who were actually in the concentration camps. These concerts they do all the time. So, relatively, I know we know personal people who tragically died from the virus, like everybody. But there is a lot of space to go forward, and hopefully we'll pick up right where we are. But yeah, I'm glad we're all staying at home and being healthy first, and then we can go on.
Michael and Megan, I want to thank you both so much for joining the show for Music Matters. It's just, I wish you the best, and keep making music together, keep making exciting plans, and before you know it, we're going to be making music together in the same room soon.
And one more thing, November 17th, 2020, at 54 Below, Jason Tramm and you and me and Lana, what's her name?
Lana Wood.
Lana Wood is going to be with us doing the new James Bond.
She's a Bond girl from the 1970s.
She's Natalie Wood's sister. Yeah, I love her. Anyway, so we're going to be all doing a James Bond concert. I hope we can have.
Yes, and we are, tentatively scheduled. We've got the deposit down, so please, I hope that happens. I hope the Parks concerts at the historic houses in New York City happen, and the 5 boroughs. So we're hoping
we'll make it
but
work.
We'll see.
Either, whether it's now or whether it's a little farther,
much.
These concerts will happen, and music will keep we'll keep moving forward.
Thank you
for
so
having
much,
us, Jason.
Jason. It's been a pleasure. Bye.
Thank you for joining us at Music Matters 2020, our unique podcast community. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, share with your friends and your colleagues, hit that bell for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Consider supporting us on patreon.com/mm2020, and keep music alive. Good night.